Sometimes I wonder if we understand Islam as it should be understood.
Sometimes it's hard to strengthen our faith amidst all these distractions.
Sometimes we're confused about what we want and what our next steps should be.
Sometimes you need to take a moment and reflect on what matters most.
And because we live in such uncertain times with so much going on around us, I guess sometimes we just gotta sit down and talk about it. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So every now and then, some of my friends and I, we speak about some of the amazing times we had at Jamia Ahmadiyya, Canada, and some of those times that, really shaped us and transformed us, and just the fun that we had. And, we like to reminisce about, what happened and, just have fun with those memories. So, I'm very convinced. I wouldn't want any young person to miss out on what Jamia can provide from my own experience. But if there is somebody on the fence about going to Jamia, sort of like, what would we say to them to try and convince them?
I could give them my own personal example of why I made the decision to come to Jamia. Near the end of high school, I had to make a decision of what do I want to do with my life. And in the end, I thought about all the different choices I had in front of me, and the one that stuck out to me the most, the one that if I chose, I wouldn't have any regrets going any other way, was Jamia, was to be a missionary. I enjoyed helping people. I enjoyed, the service of religion, and this just seemed like the highest calling that I could answer to. So that is a personal reason. Other than that, people have their own reasons why they come to Jamia. They can increase their religious knowledge. There's lots of opportunities to travel and create brotherhood amongst other people. One thing that I didn't really have a lot of growing up was relationship with other Ahmadi guys around my age, and this is something that has allowed me to have lots of Ahmadi friends, which I didn't have that much before. So this is something that does help a person in his pursuit of a connection with Allah, I would say, as well as making themselves a better person as well.
So you're in your final year of Jamia Ahmadiyya,
Yes.
Canada, right? And what's funny is I still remember the year when Waqas came into Jamia, and when we asked where he was from, Renfrew, right?
Yeah.
And we were just shocked because there are no Desis, no Pakistanis in that area. So it was pretty interesting how, like, watching these guys grow older in front of us as well, right? Because we were in Jamia at the same time. What are other things that, people would consider Jamia for? Like, what are some reasons that you think
I
of?
think some of these things that we're talking, I think it's one of these points as well that, people coming from different backgrounds, so many varying backgrounds. And everyone has their own walk of life. Everyone has their own interests, their own strengths, right, that they develop over time, in the period of their elementary school years, high school years. But everyone comes there's a single purpose, right? Everyone has their own individual reasons that, maybe they had, a family member who was a missionary and they wanted to follow in their footsteps, or they wanted to, just serve the faith. Whatever the case may be, at the end of the day, the underlying common denominator is that we want to serve Islam, right? And so whatever driving force it may be, like for me, it was one of the things Waqas mentioned was that, this was something that you knew you wouldn't have any regrets about. You look at different careers and you think, okay, this is the pros and cons of that. Job security, am I going to be able to find a job? And you look at people, other people our age who are going through this struggle. Whereas we know we're comfortable, not just from the sense of a job security standpoint, just limiting it to that, but the fact that we have our goal and we're set towards that and we know what we're doing. We don't have to worry about all these other things. We're solely focused towards the service of Islam. And that is something that you cannot possibly have any sort of regret about because of the way that we're going about it, especially in light of the global climate. To have youth who have grown up here to come together and charge forward in this, in this cause is something, especially when you're doing it with your brothers, I can't think of anything better than that.
Sarmad, you're also in your final year of Jamia, correct?
Yes.
So, Muzammil, which year of Jamia are you in?
Fourth year, alhamdulillah.
Fourth year, mashallah. So what sort of pushed you to come to Jamia? You're from Las Vegas in USA,
Correct.
right? So what is it that convinced you to come to Jamia? Now, by the grace of Allah, you're in your fourth year.
Alhamdulillah, by Allah's immense grace. But growing up, every kid wants to be a superhero, right? And I guess growing up, I realized that Islam was a superpower. Not to get too personal, but I would grow up seeing my father do tabligh. And we'd go to different people's houses. We'd see people in low-income housing, from a poor socioeconomic background, and so on and so forth. After they accepted Islam, I would see that, the father would get a new job. The kids, their grades would spike. Their lives just changed. And I was like, that's a superpower. And growing up, once again, you see Batman, you see Spider-Man, you want to be like them. And they save cities, they change communities, they change the world. And I would see these families change one by one, and I was like, I want to do that. I want to grow up being that. And that's kind of what really got me into Jamia. In a nutshell, you could say.
And that's one thing that we see a lot of actually in Jamia. You see a lot of these stories where, being, the men of the household, you're expected to maybe, provide for the household, provide for your parents, you want them to have a comfortable life. And so sometimes people have this reservation that, how will I be able to do this when I'm coming to Jamia? No source of income really or anything like that. But when you dedicate yourself for, a righteous purpose, right, a good cause, especially in the cause of Allah, you see things happening in such a way where you could have put all your efforts into it, it wouldn't have happened either way, right? You see people that, before they came to Jamia, their father was struggling finding a job. They come to Jamia, a few months later, they're financially in ways that they couldn't even have imagined. There's so many of these types of stories where people come to Jamia. So when there's this worry, right, and we all have our different, family backgrounds and different positions that we come from. But when these worries, they take care of themselves. When you've, taken that step in the direction of Allah and you've said, what, I'm going to dedicate my life for this, the rest I'll leave in God's hands and He'll take care of.
What's interesting, once I was asking some of my fellow Jamia classmates as to why they all decided to come to Jamia. I was curious because these are guys that we spend so much of our time with. So sometimes we would hear the generic type of response, I was born a Waqfino, so this was my calling and I needed to do this, and which is honorable in and of itself as well. And then I asked one of my classmates, and he said, I just want to be happy in life, And that's one of the things that's one of the answers that sort of stood out to me. That's why I clearly remember that day. Because it's not an answer that I was expecting or an answer that I even thought about, right? There are so many distractions in society, so many other worries. And for example, God Almighty says in the Holy Quran that He wishes to lighten your burdens, right? Because man is created weak. So I see Jamia as a fulfillment of that. And everything has its own trials, but at the end of the day, when you think about just happiness, something that the world is craving, and so many different cases of, mental health issues and depression and whatnot. And you just say, Alhamdulillah, after, dedicating your life for the cause of God Almighty and for the propagation of the message of the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And you sort of realize how Allah Ta'ala takes care of you every step of the way.
And I think that's the biggest reason why. Because once you go into a career, you're doing it for yourself, for your family, right? There's even though it's not intended, there is a selfish aspect to it where, you want to be comfortable, you want your family to be comfortable. But when you come here to Jamia, you essentially forget yourself and you lose for all intents and purposes, your own identity, right? It's interesting. I thought of this in the beginning when I came to Jamia. We put the uniform on, the white shalwar kameez and the black waistcoat and the jinnah cap. And, back in the day, when they used to go to war, they would have armor on, right? And they would have the helmets which would cover their faces. So when you're in battle, you don't know who's who. The only way you can identify them is by the armor that they're wearing. And to me, standing with my brothers and going forward in this cause, that's what it felt like, that we have that helmet on. It doesn't matter who we are, it doesn't matter what our names are, who we are as individuals. We have now stepped forward for this cause, and we're all going to, fight for this cause. Right? And that's really what it felt like, and that's really what it is. You're not doing it for yourself, you're doing it for a greater purpose, and that's, I feel, where that sense of fulfillment comes from.
I love it. One thing that I've come to realize recently is the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the Holy Quran, and the Promised Messiah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, all prophesized, a group of special men, a group of a special institution that will be the elite, in speech, in spirituality, in academics. And I'm not saying we are those men, but point me to an institution that gives you an opportunity to become those men better than Jamia Ahmadiyya. If this is not a fulfillment of that prophecy, then what is, or where are they?
And I mean, taking a look at it from that perspective, Jamia Ahmadiyya, historically speaking, is the only religious institution that was started by a prophet of God, which is quite a distinction, to have the honor and opportunity to study in such an institution and learn about faith, which is, I mean, Hazrat Muslim Maud used to say that all different types of knowledge are important, but religious knowledge is by far the most important thing that you have to understand and you have to learn, right? So with regards to this, what are some things that, if somebody was interested in Jamia or somebody wanted to know about Jamia, what are some things that we learn in Jamia, various subjects and courses?
Some subjects and courses, basically you're trying to learn about your religion, about Islam. And starting from the very beginning, you can't do that if you don't know the very basics, which are the languages in which all our scripture and all our teachings are in. They're in Arabic, and in the Ahmadi Muslim community, they're in Urdu mostly. So right in the beginning, you have to learn Arabic, you have to learn Urdu. Now that is very difficult, and me and my brothers have all gone through it, knowing next to no Arabic and varying degrees of Urdu. So you get to a decent level that you can decipher what the Quran is saying in regards to Quran translation. If somebody is, I remember in the very beginning, that was my biggest eye-opening moments, when somebody was reciting a portion of the Quran that I didn't have memorized, but I could still understand what he was saying just because I learned some Quran translation. And that was a big boost for me. I'm like, okay, I'm actually learning something. This is coming in handy. Urdu, starting to read the books of the Prophet Messiah in the original text. How many times have we heard that you don't get the true mazza or whatever, the essence and the enjoyment of reading the books of Prophet unless you read them in the original Urdu? And that's very true, which is something that I never would have gotten to experience had I not come to Jamia. So
that's another thing, and picking up on that translation point and learning Arabic, as kids growing up, reading namaz behind an imam, and he's leading namaz and we're just there in our own thoughts because we don't understand what's going on, right? I remember like in first year that we just started learning, right? And we were learning the word for word translation of the Quran, and we're learning some Arabic and we're picking up on it. And I remember the first time I'm standing in namaz, I finally understood what was going on. Now it was such a great feeling because, it's this sense of fulfillment, because this is stuff that you don't just apply, what you're learning in Jamia, you're not just applying it in the classroom or on exams. This is real life stuff. You're applying it every single day. We read namaz every day, we read the Quran every day, and we apply this stuff. And we can not only apply it, but continue learning based on that knowledge, right? It's interesting, Huzur said, during one of the convocation ceremonies of Jamia, we're learning for 7 years, and it's not a short period of time. It's not too long, but it's not too short either. Right? We're learning for 7 years. And he said, now, to the graduating class, he said, this is where your real studies begin. This is where your real learning begins, right? Because you come to Jamia, there's so many different books you're going to read, so many different things, subjects, whatnot. Then once you're in the field, once you're really working, that's when, with the real life experience that you're garnering at that time, you can take those things that you learned in Jamia and start applying them and molding them according to the situations that you're in.
What's actually amazing is the pace at which we were able to get a good grasp of Urdu and then even Arabic and the translation of the Holy Quran. I mean, it would be motivating to other people, even who were non-Jamia students, that if you want to learn Urdu, it's very possible because we learn it. I mean, within a year, Jamia students are reading the complex books of Hazrat Masih Maud and understanding the content thereof, right? Yeah.
Is this a part where I'm supposed to speak Urdu?
That's exactly what I was going to ask you. So how's your Urdu coming?
Urdu aati hai. Alhamdulillah. Urdu aati hai. Alhamdulillah. But one thing I wanted to add on to was that I'm not going to confine our academics to the books. In Jamia, you learn quite a bit about yourself because you read a lot of hadith, you read a lot of the Holy Quran, and a lot about the life of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you can begin to apply it to yourself, and you see where you stand amongst these saints. You can see how much you can take, how early you can wake up in the morning, how long you can keep that up. And I learned quite a bit about myself in these 4 years.
I think that's very important as well. I used to question as well, why is it 7 years? So long, right? And if you look at it, if you really wanted to, you could condense the course and do it if you wanted to in 3-4 years, right? But why 7 years? And it was, further along in my years in Jamia that I realized that it's not really about the studies, right? That's not the end all and be all of Jamia. There's a much I don't want to say bigger, but there's a huge aspect to Jamia, which is aside from the studies, which is that Jamia life. You know, you're living in the hostel, you're living with, I mean, people from Las Vegas, you have people from Ottawa, Renfrew, you have people from Malaysia, from Australia, from Iran. You're living with all these people, you're dealing with all these different people who have come from different walks of life, different backgrounds, different personalities. Everyone has something different that they bring to the table. You're learning about that. Like Muzammil said, you're learning about yourself, right? These 7 years, once you come out of Jamia, then you're going to your respective Jamaats, and now now you're a representative of Khalifatul Masih. So in these 7 years, you have to mold yourself so that you can be ready to do that.
You know what's interesting about 7 years is Hazrat Muslim Maud radiallahu ta'ala anhu used to say that in 7 years, a person transforms entirely. And this is why the Jamia year has been set as 7, because when you enter you're a person, you have your own personality and your own identity. And then after 7 years, you're a completely transformed and changed man.
Definitely, yeah.
And this is, I think there's, a lot of science behind this as well, right?
No, for sure.
I feel like in 7 years, you even start working as a missionary while you're still in Jamia as well. Like, because of 7 years, there's some people right now that are 7 years younger than me in Jamia. And that seems like a whole different generation. But now it's kind of my job to see to their upbringing and how they come into Jamia and help them out and teach them. And that's something that I'm going to be doing as a missionary, inshallah. So that's something that really it helps you, it's like a co-op almost, you're already doing that job while you're still learning it. And this is a job that, you brought up the point that this institution was started by a prophet. This is an institution started by a prophet, and this is the profession of prophets. What did prophets do? They spread the message of Islam, and they increased the morality of the people. And what else does a missionary do? So you come to an institution started by a prophet to do the work of prophets. And if anyone has any more doubts after that, I mean, that's pretty much the highest you can do.
So, I mean, other than the studies and the educational aspect, there's a lot of, field trips and excursions that Jamia goes on, and Jamia students, being sent for Waqf Arzi, which was always a great time, especially when you're traveling with, classmates and other guys, in Jamia. So what are some of the things that are happening nowadays in Jamia or in the past, I guess, 2 to 3 years?
Jamia is always going on trips and stuff, either organized by Jamia or guys themselves. Because we talked about Jamia life and the brotherhood that we create with each other, this is something that, okay, you have some time off, you have a couple of days off, you have a weekend, a short break, get some guys together and let's go on a trip. I've been all around the world with Jamia guys. We've gone to UK and seen Khalifatul Masih with other Jamia guys. So this is something that you may not do if you don't have such a tight-knit bond, such a tight-knit group. Jamia organizes, every year there's a winter sports day where we go skiing and tubing, and that's a good experience where Muzammil comes from Las Vegas, in the middle of the desert. He might not have never experienced that. So this is something that Jamia does try to teach you a bit of everything. There's a camping trip for a senior class as well. Every year you get to learn how to camp and live like that, which some people, if you grew up in the city, might not have done that.
I mean, I had no idea how many opportunities I would have coming to Jamia. It's only because of Jamia I was able to go to many South American countries. Only because of Jamia I was able to go all over America. Only because of Jamia I went to Europe and went all over Canada as well. And went skiing and fell many times. But and how close you get to your brothers while you're going through these trips, it's something I never would have imagined.
And I know this is one thing that Waqas remembers. At the end of our first year, it's probably one of the most memorable things we've ever done, is that when Hazrat Khalifatul Masih was traveling to Western Canada. And we were all, when we had heard leading up to, Hazur was coming, just the other side of the country, so will we get time off Jamia, will we be able to go and whatnot. And I remember the day when they told us that not only can we go, we're all going together, right? And we all got on a plane and we all flew over to Vancouver, all of Jamia. And we were there and we were all living together and we were there welcoming Hazur together in and around, that atmosphere. And that whole trip of just kind of following Hazur around when he went to Vancouver and Calgary, around Western Canada, with, in that atmosphere with Jamia students. That honestly is one of the most memorable things, and who knows if that opportunity would have come about if it wasn't for us being in Jamia.
I mean, I think that's one of the most central aspects of a Jamia student's life, somebody who's dedicating their life for Jamaat Ahmadiyya and to propagate the message of the promised Messiah, which is the blessings of Khilafat Ahmadiyya. So let's speak about beloved Huzur's. I mean, there's definitely a distinction of beloved Huzur's love that he shows to Jamia students and missionaries. And we as Jamia students and we as missionaries have felt it. What can we say with regards to that?
This is something that, being in Jamia, I've considered myself very lucky that I was able to be in a position to receive that love. I would say that, for example, when he came to Vancouver and Calgary, who else was able to take, a couple of weeks off work to just go there? When Huzur came to visit in Peace Village for a month, who took a complete month off work or their other responsibilities to just read namaz behind Huzur and do other work in Peace Village? It was Jamia students that were able to do that. When Huzur came to America, we had all that time off just to be around Huzur. So it puts you in a position to get the blessings from Huzur. We go to UK and immediately on, like the Mulakat thing, they'll write that, okay, this is the name and he's in Jamia. And immediately you have that almost understanding that Huzur's like, okay, you're in Jamia, he understands these are probably things you're going through, these are where you are in life, okay, you're in this year in Jamia, soon you're going to be a missionary, or okay, you have a lot of time, and he gives you advice based on that. So that's something that immediately you just have a connection with Huzur without you having to do anything.
I thought about this so much as well that, had I not been in Jamia, no way would I have had these opportunities for, to be, around Huzur like this or to meet Huzur like this. And it's just, you think about how unworthy you are and, how Huzur's kindness is just beyond imagination and beyond words. The way he treats us, the love that he treats us with, right? I've been blessed a couple of times to go to UK and meet Huzur, right? And it's just, like you said, the whole Jamaat gets that love from Huzur. I've been in mulaqats where I was closer to the beginning of the list. And I've been to mulaqats where I was number 96 out of 100 and something on the list. And both times Huzur, the way he meets you as if, it's the first person in the day he's meeting, with that same energy, with that same love. And he really makes you feel like it's just you and him, and that's it. And then on top of that, being Jamia students, it's like, it's this feeling, it's this connection that you have that you really can't describe, where Huzur's, just like, you're talking to your father, right? You go and you're feeling so nervous that, oh, how am I going to say this? Or should I say this? Or should I not say this? Will I be able to say anything at all? And then you go there, Huzur sits down, and he looks at you and he smiles, and all that goes away. And you talk to him about everything. And you can be as open as you just, and with every ounce of respect, as if you're even talking to a friend, right? That you can, he's so open for you to speak to him about anything, and he'll give you advice. And like he told one Jamia student, for example, he was struggling with, with his studies and whatnot, and Huzur told him that in 7 years, you have one job. He said, your job is to establish a connection with God the Almighty, and that's it. Everything else will take care of itself. And he says that now once he focused on that, everything fell into place. Didn't have to worry about the studies, didn't have to worry about anything. So this direct guidance that you have from Huzur really is beneficial for us Jamia students.
In Abid Khan Sahib's diaries, and I highly encourage everybody to read them. There are so many incidents and little stories of interactions of Jamia students with beloved Huzur, may Allah be his helper. And they're so beautiful to read. Sometimes I'm reading them and I wish, I wish I was that person, that I could have that sort of interaction, like even though we've all had opportunities to go and meet beloved Huzur. But, when we read Abid Khan Sahib's diaries and we get an inside glimpse into the daily life of Huzur Anwar and how so much happens and so many interactions take place. And, some of the stories that really stand out to me are those interactions with Jamia students and with missionaries and advice that beloved Huzur gives to everyone.
I mean, I would like to narrate a few, because you talked about wearing that armor, that suit that we have. When Huzur sees that black and white, you can see a different look in his eyes. If Huzur is walking down a crowd of people and he sees a jinnah cap and a black waistcoat, you always see Huzur take a second look. We always see Huzur say salam just, a little bit louder. One thing, I remember there was a line, I think this was during your guys' time actually. Huzur was passing out cherries. And once again, Huzur was giving a few cherries to everybody in a plate. And Huzur saw that black and white. Huzur saw a Jamia student. So Huzur rolled up both the sleeves on his arms, and he, the whole entire basket of cherries, he grabbed as many as he could in both hands, and he dumped it in the plate of that Jamia student. Just because he dedicated his life. And not only the time that we have to spend with Huzur, but the time that Huzur spends with us. I remember the lunch we had with Huzur, where he was sitting, you know, just a few feet away from us, eating with us, the same food we were eating, you know, spending the same time with us. It was
That's amazing. I mean, I think the love that Huzur Anwar shows to any Jamia student, I think that in and of itself is the most convincing argument to try and convince somebody to go to Jamia, right? So I mean, a lot of great points were discussed here today, and I mean, if somebody is on the fence with regards to Jamia, you know, should I go or should I not? Like, I hope today's discussion really convinced them. I mean, just the connection that you establish with beloved Huzur, may Allah be his helper, through writing letters when you're over here and going to Jalsa UK and having mulaqats with Huzur, that's a blessing that cannot be compared to any other joy in life, right? And I think that's probably, like I said before, the most convincing argument for anybody to join this blessed institution of Jamia Ahmadiyya. And we hope that, you know, a lot of youth who were thinking about it, or maybe who weren't thinking about it, are now thinking about Jamia very seriously, and hopefully they'll be applying to Jamia soon, inshallah. So Jazakallah for joining me for this discussion today, and I really enjoyed sharing Jamia stories all over again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
नौनिहालाने जमात मुझे कुछ कहना है, पर है ये शर्त के ज़ाए